Hi, I'm Andrew from Organizational Development and Change, and I will be doing my presentation on what I was able to take away from the story of Shackleton and the endurance. So, to introduce this, I would like to talk about the three different points that I'm going to be going over today. The first being a basic overview of the situation, and then I'm going to break down the four frames of leadership that Shackleton displayed. The second point that I'm going to make is the characteristics of Shackleton that he displayed as a leader, and how we can break that down a little bit further. And the third thing is going to be my personal takeaways, and how I can apply this to my future and my career. So this journey started in the early 1900s. Shackleton took a group of men to be the first people to ever cross Antarctica. Um, they started this journey with the expectation to sail really far inland to be able to get past some ice, and then make the journey across. But unfortunately, they were met with significantly more ice than they expected, and their ship ended up getting frozen. And eventually, actually, was crushed by the ice and sunk. These men were stranded for over 14 months, trying to figure out a way to get out of Antarctica. Multiple journeys where the men were separated. Five men ended up actually making the journey to a island of Jordan, where they were able to get help and come save the men. But this was far over a year past when they actually set off on this voyage. And these men were very near death when their journey started off as a mission to make it across the Antarctic, and shortly turned into a mission for everyone to make it out alive. Shackleton answered that, and they did. They all made it out alive. Um, so let's get right into the four frames. The first frame being structure, and I think the best way to look at this is how did he handle the adversity. So obviously Shackleton was the one who made the plans. He was the one who came up with the structure of their team to get everyone down there, and they all had a plan. They all had a specific job, and they were all coordinated to be pointing in the right direction. And then when things didn't go as planned and they ended up getting frozen or whatever it may have been, he came up with solutions. And instead of worrying about the negatives, he worried about solutions and getting to the next step, which saved all of these men's lives multiple times. The second point I would like to talk about, second frame, would be human resources. And I think this is his strength as a leader and as a person. This group's strength was their morale throughout this whole process, over a year-long process. His job the entire time was to keep everyone's morale up. And as a professional, as a leader, that's an important message to take away from this. But I'll talk more about that a little bit later. But he empowered his men every single day. He was people-oriented instead of being making sure someone's tying a knot right. He's making sure that person's in good spirits. He's worrying about the psychological side of things to try to keep these men's morale up, and I think that's invaluable. The third frame is political, and I think this can be summed up in his ability and his process of trying to create a family out of these guys. Once the ship got frozen, they had to figure out what to do. They all had a job, they all had things to do, and they weren't exactly what they were recruited to get there for. But everything was planned out to try to make this a family. And to build a coalition, to essentially build a team and family that couldn't be broken. And he did that. He broke it down into a way that everyone felt like, first of all, he was the unsung hero, the leader of this group, and they were going to follow him to the end of it. But also, they felt like they could lean on the man next to them to do their job. And that's a huge part of this process of getting through these changes, these crazy changes, is building an organization, or in our sense, an organization, or in my sense, a team that can lean on each other in these times. And you can count on the person next to you to do what they need to do to get you out alive. And the last one is symbolism. The last frame is symbolism. I think the symbol, I guess, that he's giving off is that he's cool, calm, and collected. In the football world, you look at it as the quarterback is cool, calm, and collected no matter what. We got a minute left, and we need to score a touchdown. Some guys got it, and some guys don't. Shackleton had it. He had the ability to really be that. He was cool, calm, and collected, and then he delivered when they needed him most, and that's huge. He was not a smoke and mirrors kind of guy. He was very upfront and straightforward about what he was trying to accomplish, and he did it. So the characteristics of Shackleton's leadership is the next point I would like to make. This is point two. Is I guess the first characteristic, like I just talked about, is his calmness. And I know that this is, you can talk about that all you want, but being calm is such a hard thing to do in moments of change and adversity. And that's the message that I took away from this as far as characteristics go, is that you need to be prepared to be calm when it's not easy to be calm. And that starts by being big picture minded, which is exactly what he did. He was worried about getting those guys out of there alive, and he was worried about what was going to do that, what was going to keep their morale high enough that they were going to make it out alive. And the last characteristic that I really wanted to highlight was the importance that he placed on loyalty. I talked about it before, about building a coalition, a team, or family, and that can only be done when there's loyalty present, and undying loyalty. And he legitimately probably never talked to a man who defied his leadership ever again. He didn't respect him. He didn't let him get a medal after this happened, because he was so upset about him breaking that loyalty. And I think that's an important characteristic of a leadership to have, not necessarily holding grudges, but being so dedicated to loyalty that it really is important, because if these people they don't feel like you're loyal to them and they're loyal to you, it's not going to work out right. So my takeaways, the final point I would like to make, my personal takeaways. I am a college football coach. So I think there's a lot of lessons that I can learn from this that I'm going to apply directly to my workplace. The number one thing that I took away from this is something that I realized when I was a player myself, is how important it is to breathe confidence into people, because you can obviously always spend a lot of time breaking people down, getting on them for making mistakes or whatever it may be. But you have to keep their morale up. You have to find a good balance between pushing them further and making sure that they're confident in themselves. Shackleton did that, and he did a really, really amazing job of it. And he kept these guys confident in themselves and in each other that they were going to get through it alive. Talked about at one point when the ship sank, that was the first time that people realized that they were in this crazy of a situation. Like, you're in Antarctica stuck for months, and you're just now realizing that takes a certain amount of confidence to be breathed into you. And then it's to expect loyalty, but to give loyalty. To be a good leader, you have to serve the people that you're there with. And he was always the front of the line when they had to go to Jordan to figure out a way out of there. He was the one going. And that's what I learned from this. I'm extremely excited to see everyone else's presentations on this and see your guys' takeaways. I think this was an amazing story to hear. This is my first time hearing about it. And I'm excited about what I've learned in this class, and I'm excited to apply it in my future. Thank you very much. And thank you, Professor.